joining us tonight, and welcome to the Northwest Consumer Law Center webinar series, How to Survive the Financial Effects of COVID-19. Today's webinar is Protect Your Home, Equity Scams in the Age of COVID-19. My name is Amanda Martin, and I'm the Executive Director of the Northwest Consumer Law Center. Tonight, we have Northwest Consumer Law Center Board Member Melissa Huelsman with us, who will be talking about foreclosure rescue and home equity scams. If you have questions during the presentation, please enter those in the chat box on your right. We will be answering questions after the presentation. This session is being recorded and will be available on our website by tomorrow afternoon. Attending this webinar does not create an attorney-client relationship. This presentation will provide legal information, and it is not a substitute for individualized legal advice. If you're seeking legal advice, we recommend you contact Northwest Consumer Law Center after this session. Information on how to apply for our services and other resources will be provided at the end of this presentation. And with that, I will hand it over to Melissa.
Hi, good evening. So tonight we're going to talk about essentially home equity scams, and we're going to be talking in general. The thing I want to start off telling everybody is these scams can take a lot of different forms. They all carry essentially a common thread, which is how to take the equity from your home and help it land in the pockets of the scammers. And they will dress it up in all different ways. But at the end of the day, that's what they're after, which is your home equity. And in particular, for those of us in Washington, and especially Western Washington, even after COVID, we are all still going to be sitting on probably significant equity in our real estate market. And so I think these are going to, we've already been seeing these happening in the last year and a half or so. They're certainly going to ramp up with COVID now being having such an impact on people's income. But I would also tell people, even if your equity isn't massive, even if it's $50,000, that's $50,000 that should end up in your pocket, not in somebody else's. So I'm going to talk generally about how these scams operate, the different forms that they take. But again, I remind everybody that there can be different iterations of them, different forms of them. Anytime anybody is offering to do anything other than list your house for sale with a licensed realtor under the standard real estate contract, if you are considering an approach to do anything other than that, then you need to seek help from a housing counselor and or a lawyer. If you have already entered into one of these transactions, seek advice from a lawyer. Let's get started though. The classic equity scam usually comes in the form of a leaseback scenario. So in these scenarios, the scammer will approach you and tell you that you're behind on your mortgage, you're facing foreclosure. This is a way for you to be able to potentially save your house. They'll tell you all the loan modifications don't work. There's no chance for you to do anything else to save your house. This is going to be your best bet. And what they're going to urge you to do is to sell your house to somebody else. It's almost always going to be a third party. The person you're talking with isn't the person who's going to be fronting the money most of the time. Sometimes it can be, but most of the time it's not. They're going to tell you, hey, this person is going to buy your house. They'll often tell you that your house is still going to be in your name and you're still going to own it. That's not true. Anybody who buys your house, they're on title and they keep it on title. And then they'll offer you an opportunity to lease back the house at a rate that is determined in various means. And you will have a year or two, sometimes 3 at the most, to be able to have an opportunity to buy your house back. Now, there are a multitude of problems with this approach, but the first begins with, if you can't pay your mortgage, the likelihood of you being able to pay rent on that same property or a lease payment is virtually non-existent. Because when the person purchases your home, they're going to have to get a loan. And that means they're going to have a loan with a loan payment. And because they aren't residing in the property, this is going to be an investment property for them. They're going to pay a somewhat higher interest rate than a person who is buying it to live in. Now, these people are also looking to make a profit. They're not doing this just out of the goodness of their heart. So they're going to require you to make all of their mortgage payments, which include property taxes and insurance, the same thing that you were paying, included in your house payment. Plus, they're going to want to make a profit for everybody who's involved in this scam. Now, that includes the person who's giving you the sales pitch. That includes the person who's giving you money. That includes the people in the back rooms that are putting together these paperwork and everything else. They're all going to want, number one, that money back and profit on top of it. Now, what happens is they don't just take out a loan that's sufficient to pay off your existing mortgage or mortgages. They take out a loan to pull the equity out of your house because that's what they really want. So if you have $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000, which is not unimaginable in Western Washington housing market, guess what? That's how much they're going to take the loan for. So when you are making these lease payments, not only are you going to be paying on a loan that is a significantly higher dollar amount than your mortgage payment, they're also going to, if you want to reacquire the house, you're going to have to buy it back at more than what they bought it for because they're going to look to make a profit on that end. So the odds of anyone ever successfully completing this and getting their house back are extraordinarily slim. We saw a great deal of these kinds of scams and various iterations of them leading up to the previous financial crisis. So in the early 2000s, leading up to 2007, 2008. And I probably had, I don't know, I could have had up to 100 or more of these cases over several years. I can't even keep track of all the cases I had. And I worked with other lawyers across the country who also had significant numbers of these cases. I did training for a bunch of lawyers across the country about how to handle these cases. And in all of these cases and all of the attorneys I worked with, there might have been one or two people who, through some miracle, were able to get their house back without interference with a lawyer. And even most of the time, once people had given up their houses, even when we filed suit, most of the time what happened is our clients wound up getting money, not necessarily always their homes back. And now remember too, if you're facing foreclosure and so you're having a hard time financially, those defaulted payments and the late payments and such are going to show up on your credit report. So when the time comes a few years from now that you want to try and buy back your home at this massively higher price, you're going to have negative credit reporting regarding that prior loan that's going to have an impact on whether or not you can get a new loan. In addition, you're essentially gambling that between now and whenever you might try and get your house back, the market is going to be the same, such that anyone would give you a loan at this much higher dollar amount. In addition, when you look at these leases and rental agreements that you have with these people, all you need to do most of the time is be late, just once. And all of a sudden you've defaulted any of your rights to be able to get the house back. And next thing you know, you're facing eviction. A great deal of these cases showed up in previous years when people would find themselves in eviction court asking why in the world they were being evicted from their homes. A huge percentage of them didn't even understand that they had in fact given away title to their home or sold their home to these third parties. They were often told, oh, don't worry, we'll put it back in your name right after this is over. It's going to be fine. And none of that is true. So you need to understand that again, I just can't emphasize enough, the odds of you getting back your home and not losing all your equity are exceedingly low. It's virtually numerically impossible, absent circumstances like you won the lottery or got a giant inheritance. So in Washington State, because of the proliferation of these scams, myself and a couple other great consumer attorneys worked really hard to change our Washington State statute. And in order to do any of these kinds of transactions, there are very significant requirements about how they have to be done. And they include reviews by attorneys. There's significant licensing requirements, there's disclosure requirements. It's a very high burden to do any of these. And again, you're still going to have some third party reviewing this to make sure that everybody understands the terms of the transaction and understands all of the risks involved. So even though we have these laws, though, you're going to see, and well, we've already seen efforts to skirt these laws and to try and do these transactions in other ways. So be aware that there is a law on the books that is very useful for this. And even if we can't rely on that particular law, which, maybe we will, maybe we won't, depending on the facts, there are other laws in Washington that we can use to try and get this resolved in your favor. I want you to be aware, though, that among the people that are going to approach you with these kinds of offers are very often going to be real estate agents and mortgage brokers. They're going to tell you, hey, I got the deal. This is, going to help you out. Don't listen to them. As I said, and this is not all mortgage brokers and not all realtors are going to do these, but a lot of these scams, that's who gets involved in them. They actually become very convinced that, in fact, they really are helping you out, ignoring the fact that they're all going to make a whole bunch of money on it. But as I said, if a realtor talks to you about anything other than listing your house under a traditional a broker's agreement to list your house for sale and to sell it to a third party who finds your house on the internet or does it through, open houses or whatever, and who is, represented by some other realtor, the way it traditionally happens, it's suspicious and you need to be very careful. I've recently had a couple of people who got approached and didn't agree to a lease back, but agreed to sell the house, which had significant equity, with promises that they could stay in the house for a couple months after the sale, and to help them get money for necessary purchases. And of course, the people who've came to see me after the documents were signed. Even when I spoke to them about the potential problems with the contract, they were convinced that this was a very nice person who was doing it. They were honorable. It was all going to be fine. And lo and behold, once I helped the people who came to see me with getting the house sold, because they did want to sell it, they knew they couldn't keep it. It turns out the promises to be able to stay on the property, not be interfered with and all that for the next few months was not true. And they found themselves living in the middle of a construction zone. So while the person honored the agreement that the clients could stay in the house for a month or two so that they could get the money and find a new place to live, they literally were forced into basically couldn't use anything in the house except a bedroom and kind of a bathroom because the person who bought it was engaging in major construction or remodeling. So things like that can happen even when there's promises in the contract that seem like they're ironclad and they're not. And so this person, yes, I guess she had shelter for about a month, but she got out sooner than she really needed to, simply because she could not live in the middle of a construction zone. And this person, who was previously such a nice guy, wasn't so nice when she was interfering with his desire to get the house remodeled and to get it on the market right away. So there are other variations of the scams that come about. Many of them are from these, when you see the signs on the roadsides, buy your houses, I pay cash, etc. So the first thing I'm going to say is anybody who's advertising something by putting paper flyers on telephone poles or handmade signs stuck on the corner of intersections. That's not somebody who's engaged in a legitimate business practice. You will notice that the vast majority of these people are only giving a telephone number. They don't have a website. Their email, if they give it to you, is a Gmail. And that's because they don't want to have websites, because in years past, a lot of these scam companies did have websites. And myself and other attorneys found them to be fantastic sources of information about the scams that they were operating on people with the false promises that they were making to people. So what I've been seeing for the last couple of years with these We Buy Houses is there is no website, there's Gmail, Yahoo email addresses, and there's telephone numbers that, by the way, often disappear later on until a new phone number pops up. So anybody who is pitching to buy your property based on a phone call and we have cash and we can make this happen right away, you're not getting the best price, and you're certainly not going to have any kind of protections in that transaction that you would get using a realtor, a licensed realtor who is operating for your benefit, not for themselves, and or a lawyer who could take you through the transaction. Even if you face a scenario where your property is in really bad condition, you're potentially even having citations from the city, etc., those can all be dealt with. Attorneys like myself have dealt with those issues with cities and been able to obtain time for our clients to get properties marketed and properly sold. So even if your property is in a terrible condition, don't let anybody mislead you into thinking that a deal can't be done with that property. You just need to find the right buyer. And again, finding the right buyer is not going to generally come from a handwritten sign stuck on a corner or on a telephone pole that you see when you're walking your dog. Now, the thing to remember is, so part of this is just identifying generally some of the scams. Beware of, I would also just take a moment to warn people, there's also going to be a lot of people selling seminars telling you how to get rich doing these. They're going to say that you can go take a free seminar down at, the airport Sheraton, and I'm just not picking on the Sheraton, I just grabbed a hotel name, where you can go and you can get a free seminar, and they're going to tell you how you get rich doing this. Now, these seminars are free initially, but what they're really trying to do is sign you up for programs that are going to cost you in the neighborhood of $40,000 to $50,000 to $60,000, telling you how you're going to get rich doing these kinds of flip deals. There's also obviously TV shows on a certain channel that also tell you how to do these. Don't listen to them. They don't tell you the reality of it, and it is extremely difficult to do any of these flips. And if you are in fact going to do them, you aren't going to learn how to do them from some random seminar that's advertised on late night TV or is promoting him or herself on certain television channels. Because guess what? The people who are engaged in that business and are making legitimate money aren't out teaching anybody else how to do it. And when there's great deals, they're getting them for themselves. What you were going to wind up doing is the same thing that several of, well, I would say actually now at this point, many clients that I've had over the years have done, which is getting yourself hooked on a contract and beholden to somebody for $40,000 to $50,000 to $60,000. You're going to get a bunch of materials that are worthless. They provide generic information that may not apply in your state, your county, your city. And they will promise you coaching, and all these supposed experts are going to help you get rich. Well, the reality is other rich people, real rich people, don't go around offering seminars to teach other people how to get rich. Because guess how they're getting rich? They're getting rich on the money, telling you how to go to these seminars and allegedly make money. So don't do that. And if you're thinking about doing it, feel free to consult a lawyer who really knows what they're talking about, not just some random person who says, I'm a real estate lawyer. Find somebody who really knows. Get a consultation with them and have them go through it all with you. Beware of anybody in what we call an affinity group that assures you that this deal is on the up and up because he or she and or the person they're referring to you is part of some community that you're a part of. So it is very common for people to be enter into these scams, or be convinced to enter into these scams by people who who go to your house of worship or purport to be of the same religion you are. They are people who often have the same ethnic or cultural background as you. People you would think, oh, they would never harm anybody in our community. They will. I've had more cases than I can count of people doing precisely that. One lady that I helped over the years was scammed by a young woman who she considered a family member, and this woman was horribly scammed. And when the scammer was getting arrested and sued, members of her church were always present, claiming vilification. She, was innocent. And about a year and a half later, I had a whole bunch of members of her church trying to contact me to see if I could help them recover their money that they had been scammed by her. I declined to help any of them. So be on the lookout for that. Don't trust somebody just because they're a friend of a friend, or because you know their cousin, or because they're part of your religious group, or your, your art class, or, part of your cultural group, or your dance class, or whatever it is. Because people who are running scams really look for people who are going to inherently give them trust because they're part of some common group. And that's exactly who these people intentionally prey on. I'm going to remind you again, don't be fooled by the fact they're a realtor or a mortgage broker. And in some cases, frankly, I've sued some lawyers for participating in these. Don't be fooled by that. Again, if you really want to sell your house, go find a realtor that is going to list your house and put it up for sale and market it and get paid that way. I would also remind you to look at some of our other videos and other information that is out there. If you are fearful about losing your home, there are resources available to you. We have that information on our website, information about how to contact Northwest Consumer Law Center, how to contact the Washington Housing Finance Commission, which runs a hotline for people to get connected to housing counselors. There is the Clear Line, which is a statewide telephone number in Washington, where you can call and get referrals to nonprofits and or private attorneys if you don't qualify for a nonprofit to help you with these. There are all kinds of resources available. There are the Washington State Foreclosure Fairness Act, which allows people to enter into mediation when they're facing foreclosure, when there's a referral from a housing counselor and or a lawyer. So all of that can get you time and help and assistance so that you're exploring all options about what may be available or not available to you in connection with trying to save your house. And the reality is that people like me, who are good lawyers or good housing counselors, if it really is not possible that any of the programs available are going to help you save your home because of your particular circumstances, we'll tell you that. We'll also tell you that there may be a whole bunch of options available to you to try and save your house, and that you should go through all of those and see if any of them would work before you make the difficult decision to sell your house. But at the very least, we're going to help you make sure that if in fact you do have to sell your house, that you're going to do so under the kind of circumstances that are going to help you to preserve all of that equity that you've built up in your home, so that you can keep all of that equity and do a move out and a relocation with dignity and with money in your pocket. I don't see, Amanda, that we have any questions.
If you have any questions, go ahead and enter those in the chat box on your right. And Melissa, I actually have a question for you. Let's say someone is receiving in the mail, I hear about a lot of like ads for things that look like foreclosure rescue, or maybe somebody knocks on their door. Are there places?
You also get the handwritten letters handwritten envelopes and letters that tries to make it more personal.
Yeah. What should somebody do if they receive something like that? Should they report it to a state agency or something like that?
Well, I think it would be good to go ahead and just give the information to the Washington State Attorney General. They are going to, I don't know that they have a unit or anything set up right now, excuse me. But we do want them to know about it. You can also let us know at Northwest Consumer Law Center, because I am definitely tracking these scammers. When I get them mailed to my house, I save them so that I have records of what they look like when other people potentially come to see me. And whenever clients come in to see me, I always save them, because I want to keep track of because inevitably what happens as this goes on is there are more and more repeat players, and I want to see the different versions. So other than that, though, throw them away. Do not respond to them. Nobody who is writing you a letter saying that they're just looking to buy houses in your neighborhood, they're not going to give you top dollar, and they're going to rush you through a closing, and you're not going to realize what hit you, and you're not going to know how much money you could have had you gone to somebody who was legitimately operating on your side. So I have a question from Connor about any new home scans specifically because of COVID-19. I haven't seen that yet. My expectation is that we're going to see really heavy scare tactics resulting from that. We've got people who are being pitched the forbearance programs, and they're getting into them. But right now, it's pretty clear that a lot of these are going to require lump sum payments at the end. So you're behind 3 months, maybe even 6 months if they get extended. And all of a sudden, you're going to have to come up with that money. There's also been discussion that some of those are going to result in payments to repay those delinquent accounts spread out over maybe a year or something. There's still going to be people who aren't going to be able to meet those requirements. They're going to be struggling to even getting back to making those mortgage payments. So what they need to do is talk to professional attorneys, nonprofits, housing counselors to get help about how to manage that process. But we're certainly going to see these scammers approaching people with the scare tactics, and you're not going to get this, and your servicer is going to give you the runaround, which is probably true. And you need to get out of this now. Those are the kinds of pitches that we're certainly going to see, and they're going to be playing on all of those fears of uncertainty. So I haven't seen one specifically yet targeted to COVID-19, Connor, but it's certainly coming. And that's why we wanted to do this webinar, to get ahead of this, so this can sit out here and people can hopefully find it, be aware of it, and then we will be updating this just as we have everything else as we start seeing the various iterations of these and seeing what kind of approaches people are specifically getting.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Thank you, Melissa. And then just one more thing. It's not a question, more of a statement that I'm wondering if you could touch on. I have people who come up to me at our bankruptcy clinic, and they say, I am in foreclosure and my realtor told me to file for bankruptcy to save my home. I know you could probably do a whole presentation on this, but is that something you can quickly touch on?
Yeah, don't take legal advice from a realtor. And a realtor, frankly, should never say anything like that to anyone. That is providing legal advice, which is illegal if you are not a licensed lawyer in this state. And you might have real estate agents that are well-intentioned. They can certainly refer people to nonprofits, attorneys, housing counselors, whatever, to try and figure out their options. That's entirely appropriate for a real estate agent to do, but they have no business giving anybody legal advice and telling them what to do. And certainly anybody who faces foreclosure, if you are facing foreclosure on your home, absolutely 100% do not try and do a bankruptcy yourself. Bad things will happen.
Thank you, Melissa. And then I have the resources on here that you mentioned. If you, Melissa, could just talk briefly about each of them.
Sure. So Northwest Consumer Law Center is obviously our organization. Sorry. You can contact us online or by phone. We certainly help people who are low income, but we also are designed to help people who have a little bit higher income and kind of more middle range income. And even if we can't help you, we will refer you to private attorneys who can help. So, and the same is true of Northwest Justice Project. Northwest Justice Project is specifically focused on low-income individuals, but they too, if they can't help you because you're outside of their limitations, will absolutely refer you to private attorneys and or even Northwest to see who can provide the best help. They should not, and I don't expect them to, they never have, leave anybody hanging. The Washington Homeownership Resource Center has an 800 number, which will get you to a housing counselor in the state of Washington. Housing counselors are free to everyone. There's no income requirements. So that is a great place to start. And again, if you need legal representation, if it's beyond simply a housing counselor trying to help you figure out how to save your house because you've become enmeshed in some kind of transaction, they will absolutely get you referred to a lawyer who can help you with this. There are legal solutions to this. I have handled, again, like I said, more of these cases than I'd like to count. Don't let anybody tell you that there's nothing to be done. You sign something, that's it, you're stuck with it. That's not true.
Thank you, Melissa, and thank you for your great presentation. Next week, for the next session in our NWCLC webinar series, we're partnering with our friends at Eastside Legal Assistance Program to talk about stimulus checks. We'll be doing a short presentation followed by Q&A. That'll be on Wednesday, May 13th at 6 p.m. You can sign up by going to our website. We want to hear from you. What topics do you need to know more about as you deal with the financial effects from COVID-19? Let us know in the chat box on your right. And you can see our website to watch other sessions in our NWCLC webinar series. Sessions on student loans, mortgages, foreclosure, bankruptcy, and more are available now. Go online to nwclc.org/COVID-19. If you're seeking legal assistance, you're welcome to contact us. As Melissa mentioned, we help folks of low and moderate income in Washington State. You can apply online or by phone. The website and the phone number are on your screen. And thank you for joining us tonight, and have a good evening.